Let me start off by saying that this list was extremely hard to put together, but I'm excited to share it with you.
You're gone now, will you coming back? Yeah, I know that.
Hey, what's up everyone? My name is Jessie and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today is a very exciting video. I feel like it's one that all viewers kind of look forward to. I know personally for me, I look forward to seeing these videos from other people that I'm subscribed to, but it is the top 10 favorite books of 2021. This was extremely hard to put together. I have like a bunch of notes of like what I'm trying to do as far as like organization and things like that. I even thought about doing like a bracket type style to where I can narrow down my top 10. I also thought about doing like a tier ranking, but I thought that would be kind of weird with it only being in the top 10. So we're just gonna do old school sit down, old school YouTube videos of me just talking about the top 10 favorite books of 2021. Also, if you're curious about the worst books that I've read for 2021, that video will be coming out shortly. I plan on filming it like right after this one, so stay tuned. So starting at number 10 all the way up to number 1 with the best book of 2021. Going with number 10, it is Beach Read by Emily Henry. I know I'm so late on the train. I'm so late on a lot of these books. I love this book for multiple reasons. One, I love that I had it on my shelf for a very long time, finally picked it up and ended up loving it. It also gives me good memories of Romance-a-thon because I was a co-host. My friend Jacqueline was hosting it this year and she asked me to be a co-host. So thank you to her for, allowing me to be a co-host. So thank you very much, Jacqueline. Another reason why I love this book was I was scared to read it because it was very much overhyped, but I think it's worth the hype, honestly. This book was so good. It gave me all the warms and fuzzies. I'm very picky with my romances. That's why I don't really read that many. But this one I do love because it does have that emotional side to things, so definitely worth picking up. This one follows two writers who are kind of having like problems with their writing project, and they are going to this like lake house. It's kind of like a hate to love situation because they were like frenemies in college and things like that, so they kind of don't like each other, but then their romance blossoms and things of that nature. But they both have like writer's block, so they decide to swap genres, and I think that was such a cool and interesting idea and definitely worth a read. Number 9, I have to actually give thanks to my friend Gwen here on YouTube. She actually is the reason why I picked up this book, because I did a video very early on this year about reading other YouTubers' favorite books, and I picked up Christina Lauren's Love in Other Words. Love in Other Words is such a sweet, touching, emotional book. I personally love this one. This is more of a second chance, friends to lovers type of book, and oh my gosh, I'm not a fan of Christina Lauren. Like every time I've tried to pick up a book by theirs, I just like roll my eyes the entire time. So this one was such a pleasant surprise. So thank you, Gwen, for like making me want to read this book. But this is so sweet. But you basically you get flashbacks from the past and now in the present, but basically our main character has run into an old friend, an old love, and she's like engaged to be married, and you get flashbacks of when they were 12 years old, like just friends that went to this like lake house, and it's just so freaking sweet and so touching. I bawled my eyes out with this one. I would definitely pick this one up if you haven't already. Okay, now let's get to some thrillers because I think I don't have another romance for a good while. So at number 8, I recently just read this one and I loved it. But before we discuss it, it is not your traditional thriller. Let me just say that. Like if you're looking for twists and turns, I don't think you're gonna like this one. But I think if you like that taboo, like gray area, like this is wrong but you're feeling like it isn't wrong type of deal, I think you would like this one. Plus it does talk on other important topics. So it's also by one of my favorite authors, Lucinda Berry, but it is Saving Noah. I loved this one. This was actually a buddy read with my friend Jacqueline over on her Patreon channel, and I was very pleasantly surprised by this one. It is so good. Again, not like a twisty like whodunit type thriller. So it revolves around this mother who's married to her husband, and she has her son Noah, and she also has a daughter. But basically Noah admits to her that he's been having inappropriate, like basically sexually assaulting like little girls on the swim team that he coaches for, and Noah is like 16, maybe 17 years old. And so it definitely, like, I am not promoting like, you know, sexual assault or anything like that. It definitely talks about like, you know, being like a child predator or a pedophile and things of that nature. It talks about like how with Noah being a minor, like how he's tried as an adult, as a child, and like things he has to go through, you know, to correct his wrongs basically. But it also focuses around the family of how like this really divides up their family and things of that nature. So I personally loved it. You definitely learn a lot, and I would highly recommend if those things don't trigger you, or actually anything by Lucinda Berry, you know I'm going to promote. So definitely check this one out if you're interested. Okay, so the next one is like a kind of controversial book here on YouTube, but I personally loved it. You know, I'm not going to base my ratings around other people's feelings or opinions. Like, if I had a great time, I'm going to give it, you know, a high rating, things of that nature. If it doesn't bother me, you know, anyways, getting off my high horse here. But I know a lot of people did not like this one. I personally like this one and plan on picking up everything else by this author. It is Survive the Night by Riley Sager. I know a lot of people don't like this one. I know a lot of people don't like how he wrote about the main character being so naive and kind of like stupid in a way, but I personally did not pick up on any of that. Like, I truly felt like this was kind of like all of his old other writing. I love Riley Sager's writing style. Like, it definitely like captivates you. This book also definitely gave me those 90s vibes that I grew up in and really enjoyed. So this one involves a woman who's in college. Her best friend was just murdered by this campus killer. And anyway, she can't really deal with what's going on. So she actually picks a ride from this guy who also is at the college for like a ride home, because back then, again, the 90s, you can't just like, you know, a lot of people, you know, carpooled and things like that. Well, anyway, she's riding in this car with this guy, and as she's riding, she's kind of getting the vibes that he may be the campus killer. And so it definitely makes you question, like, is she like overthinking things? Is she in the right? I loved this ride because this was such a thrill, and all of like the music aspects into it I really enjoyed. So if you haven't read this one, ignore what everyone's telling you, ignore what I'm telling you, except I think you should read it and find out for yourself. Also, I forgot to mention that was number 7. So for number 6, I actually don't own this book. I actually borrowed it from my friend Jacqueline, so thank you again for allowing me to borrow the book, but she gave me her copy of Every Value Break by Peter Swanson. This one was such a ride. Like, I can't even like put it into words, like the feelings I felt for this one. Although this was not a 5-star read for me, I just distinctly remember the experience that I read with this one and all the twists and turns and all this stuff, so that's why it's on my top 10 list. This one involves a woman who is marrying a guy who's pretty wealthy, but before she got married to him, she went on her bachelorette trip and she ended up hooking up with this guy. Now he is sending her letters, he's showing up at places, including her wedding and like her honeymoon of all places, saying like, hey, we need to talk, like I want to be with you, blah 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 blah. And so it is such a thrilling ride because she's trying to not let her new husband know what she did. So it is crazy. Also, the honeymoon is such a vibe. It's so atmospheric because they're like on this island where like you can't have any like electronic products. You're kind of like excluded from the outside world. So she's trying to figure out exactly what's going on, how this guy got here, how he's following her. I personally really like it. I think it's one of my favorite Peter Swanson books, honestly. Actually, I'm gonna go ahead and say it is. So, all right. Now we're getting into the top 5, which is super exciting. So number 5, I actually did a buddy read. I actually bought a copy for my friend Gwen, who I mentioned earlier, and I bought it for her birthday, and I actually picked up a copy myself, and it was Playing Nice by J.P. Delaney, and we did like a 3-day buddy read on this one, and it was so much fun. Like, this book is so good, and what I like about it, it's not a typical thriller like I mentioned. This one has to do with this married couple, and they get a knock at the door from this guy saying like, hey, I know this is gonna sound crazy, but our kids were switched at birth, and these kids are 2 years old, and so they've spent 2 years raising the son who they thought they were. So it makes you question, like, do you swap them back? Do you stick with the same like child that you've loved and cared for and bonded with so heavily. So it has like all these like questions, which I love in thrillers. I love when thrillers make me think like, what would I do in this situation? So I recommend this one if you were looking for something that's going to make you flip-flop. It is a little bit of a chunkier book, but I'm telling you, I flew through this book so quickly, and it has so many twists and turns towards the end, and oh my gosh, so good. I had such a fun experience reading this one. So yeah, number 5. All right, number 4, I know a lot of people either love it or hate it, and I'm personally one that really loved it. I had such a fun time reading this book. It was giving me the creeps. Like, it was so atmospheric, and I felt like some of the chapters were leaving like on a cliffhanger, and they were switching point of views. But I'm talking about Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. Also, this year for Alice Feeney, I have read all of her books that she's written so far, including Sometimes I Lie, I Know Who You Are, His and Hers, and now Rock, Paper, Scissors. She's becoming one of my new favorite authors, and I feel like as her, like, the more books she puts out, the better her writing is. But yeah, I think this one was so good. It's about this married couple who kind of win this trip to this chapel as like it's a chapel in the middle of the woods, but it's been rented out as like an Airbnb type of deal, and it's a way to like save their marriage because they're kind of on the rocks and things go crazy. Like, it's very spooky. And you also get letters from the wife who's writing to her husband that she's not ever going to let him read. But basically, it's a letter to him on every anniversary, and it has to do with the traditional gifts. Like, I think the first year is like paper and stuff like that. And it talks about like what's happened throughout the years that's brought them to this. And this book is so, so good. I personally love this one and the experience I had with it. So yeah. Okay. Top 3. I do own this book, but it is actually the next 2 books I currently own, but they're being borrowed out from my friends. I can't ever bring them home because they're constantly being borrowed. But number 3 was such a surprise for me because it is a very, very popular book in the romance genre. And honestly, I had no plans to read it, but then I saw the movie trailer. But it is The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. I loved this book. It was so good. I loved it. It was very rom-com-y, but like not overly cheesy in my opinion. Hate to love isn't typically my thing that I like in romances, but this was so freaking cute, and I love the whole like competition between the two. You have our 2 main characters, Lucy and Josh, and basically they're up for the same promotion, but they can't stand each other. But there's a lot of sexual tension between the two, and it's just so freaking good. I watched the movie. I did end up watching the movie. I will say the book was a lot better in my opinion, but I still loved the movie. Like, I'm not downing it. It's just the books are always better. Am I right? Yeah, this one was so good. I loved the sexual chemistry between the two, the banter. It was just so, so good. I highly recommend if you haven't picked it up, but again, I feel like I'm the last person to ever read this book. Okay. The final 2 are thrillers, and I'm telling you, this was probably the hardest decision between the 2. But if you look back at my like enjoyment or my experience reading these books, hands down, I have to go with what I wrote down. At number 2, we're talking about The Perfect Marriage by Geneva Rose. This went viral on TikTok. Everyone was talking about it. She has done so, so well. I've also picked up other books by her, but The Perfect Marriage is so good, and it definitely, again, makes you think like, what in the world would you do in this situation? So our main character is a big successful defense attorney, and her husband is a struggling writer. They own this like lake house that's a few hours away from the big city, and basically she gets a call saying that her husband has been arrested because he's wanted for the murder of his own mistress. So yeah, the husband claims he didn't do it, but it doesn't seem like he actually did it, but everything's pointing against him. And guess what? The wife defends him, decides to be his attorney and defends him. Like, I'm sorry if you cheated on me, goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. But yeah, it's a wild, crazy ride. You don't know exactly what happens until the very end. It's so good. It makes you think, like, why in the world would you defend this person? Like, why in the world? So good. So good. Highly recommend you pick up a copy. All right. The best book of 2021. And I'm telling you, the reason why this one was number one over The Perfect Marriage is because this was such a wild ride. And I'm telling you, like, my head was like whiplashing back and forth. But number one would have to be The Arrangement by Kirsten Moglen. This book is not like your traditional thriller in a way. It definitely makes you think, like I've mentioned before, but it's kind of like a romance turned into a thriller in a way. I don't even know how to describe it without giving it away. But basically, married couple struggling to like save their marriage. They decide on an arrangement that on certain days of the week, she will go date someone else. He will go date someone else on another day. The rules are they can't talk to each other. So, kind of like an open marriage in a way. It's so weird. Like, I could never get on board with that in my own marriage. So you can imagine, as far as like on a romance level, that's not gonna fly. Well, this took a weird turn, and oh my gosh, this book was so freaking wild. Like, when things like hit the fan, I could not breathe half the time. Like, I was so in awe of this book, and it's only like 220 pages. Like, this book definitely like packs everything in. So if you have not picked this one up, it's viral on TikTok. You should definitely go read this one, and it's getting a sequel. I don't know how I feel about that because I feel like this one was just as good by itself, but oh my god, I cannot wait for the sequel. All right, guys, that's everything for my top 10 favorite books of 2021. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what your favorite book was in the comment section down below. I would love to know, so that way if I haven't read it, I can definitely go check it out. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on another future video, and make sure you follow me over on Instagram. I'm very active over there, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.